Still hanging in there. Still needs your help.
Happy? You couldn't be having any more problems on this Spellman using, like, you're turning into my agent.
How's that?
Great. I have a meeting set up with one of the people. And I emailed the other.
Good. I thought you could at least.
Yeah, I love it.
Directly, you might be impressive.
Well, it's just fun. You never know what you're gonna see, and you might see something you've never seen before.
I think Steve just ran into the men's room, so he's here.
Okay. Where do we go? We can get these consent,
Yeah.
get started and just go ahead with the consent stuff and get it out.
I will call the meeting to order tonight, September 25th, 2017, of the Concord Board of Selectmen. Remind people that the meeting is being recorded and that the speakers please identify yourself and speak in a loud enough voice that all those who are present can hear. The first order of business is because Jane Hotchkiss is recuperating from a knee surgery, is to elect the chair pro tem.
I move to appoint Tom McCain as chair pro tem.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. I move,
The second order of business is to elect the clerk pro tem, since the clerk is now acting chair.
I move to appoint Alice Kaufman as clerk pro tem.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next order of business is the consent agenda, which we have the town accountant's warrants, the minutes from 7/17 and September 6th, accepting a gift of $500 from Jarrett Kives to the Beatty Center donations, Sunday entertainment licenses to Emerson Umbrella for October 1st, October 8th, and October 15th. The 1st and the 8th are from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. at 40 Stowe Street, the theater. And the October 15th is from 3 to 10 p.m., 40 Stowe Street. There'll be a concert. We also have a number of one-day special licenses. Concord Academy, October 12th, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., 166 Main Street, wine and malt. The Thoreau Elementary, PTG, on November 4th, from 7:30 p.m. to 10 p.m., 37 Lexington Road, wine and malt. And the Development Strategy Consultants for September 29th from 6 to 10 p.m., from September 30th from 6 to 10 p.m., from October 1st, 2 to 6 p.m., October 6th from 6 to 10 p.m., October 7th, 6 to 10 p.m., October 8th, 2 to 6 p.m., October 13th, 6 to 10 p.m., October 14th, 6 to 10 p.m., October 15th, 3 to 10 p.m. Those are all at 40 Stowe Street, and they're also all wine and malt. Then there is the November 3rd from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. at 200 Strawberry Hill Road, all alcohol. The Development Strategy Consultants. Also, Development Strategy Consultants on October 17th from 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m., November 7th from 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m., and December the 5th from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Those are at 40 Stowe Street, also wine and malt. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now we would move on to the Assistant Town Manager's report.
Thank you. I'm Kate Hodges, the Assistant Town Manager, filling in for Chris Whalen, Town Manager, as he is out until Monday. So to start, I just wanted to update the select board and anyone listening through CCTV that we have received several questions and comments regarding parking and parking meters, particularly on Main Street in Concord Center. There was a story in the journal that was printed, and there was some information in there that was erroneous, and so I just wanted to clarify. So for the meters at Main Street, Thoreau Street, and in West Concord, there are 3 ways to pay for parking. The meters in these areas have been upgraded to accept both coin and credit card for added convenience. Pay by phone parking is also available as another pay option, but it isn't the only pay option. So the meters are still taking coin there. There are 2 areas in town where a person will need a smartphone to park. Main Street near Concord Academy and the West Concord commuter parking lot. Those spaces located on the state-owned land. The pay-by-phone is the only option for Main Street near Concord Academy, and this is because the Historic Districts Commission did not approve the parking meters or the parking kiosks that would have allowed other payment options. So we've received a lot of feedback about the Main Street situation. People are generally unhappy. Our hands are a bit tied there, as, like I said, we had put in an application which was denied. So perhaps the select board might be interested in hosting some kind of public forum or something about that in the future. But at this point, there's nothing too much that we can do to alleviate any of the concerns that we have in that particular area. In addition to the paid parking, there are many off-street parking lots which are free. We are developing a page on our website that's just dedicated to parking, where we're going to have a GIS map showing people where the free areas are versus the 1 hour, 3 hour, and unlimited parking. We also have been working with our public information officer to have cards that are available to people that they can keep in their glove box or even in their wallet. That's sort of a cheat sheet on how to use the pay by phone. So I just wanted to clear that up. And also we'll be sending out information on our website and news and notices and in our town manager's report. So we're trying to get the word out as best we can. The Human Services team will be moving to 55 Church Street. They'll be moving out of the 105 Everett Street location early next week. That building will be able to accept calls and hopefully have business as usual as early as next Friday, October 6th. We hope to have a grand opening sometime after that. There's still some very limited construction that's going on in there, including recreation's renovation of the 3rd floor. So we want to wait until after that's completed, but at least we'll have the Human Services people there, fully handicapped, ADA accessible, and ample parking. So we're really looking forward to that, and thank you to the town for allowing us to purchase that. CMLP received 600 new LED streetlights last week. The town had received a grant from E&E, which stands for Energy New England, for the 600 lights. Just as a point of note, we have about 1,300 total streetlights in Concord. The plan is to replace, half over the next couple of months and possibly reapply for the grant money towards the remaining 600 to 700 that we have left. We need to have all of the streetlights in place and working by June 18th of this year to get the second part of the grant. So right now we have half. Once they're installed, up and running, then we get the second half from E&E. We're reviewing responses to a written exercise that we gave to about 20 applicants for the energy manager position. The sustainability director position. That actually received well over 150 applications. So we had a really very large pool, very qualified people. We hope to have a list of the top 6 to 8 candidates that we'd like to interview, first round in-person interviews. We'd like to have that to the board by your October 2nd meeting. The Ride-Out project, which is on Losbrook Road, is about 70% completed. The plantings are in and the berms have been installed and ready for seed. We have almost substantial completion of the walking path. And so we're hoping to wrap up all of the details, but it's really looking nice.
And safer.
Yes, yeah.
Parking, easier access.
Yep. The Affordable Housing Committee will host its first meeting tomorrow, so the 26th at 7 p.m. right here in this room. The town is still looking for additional members of that committee. And Coming to your agenda for the October 2nd meeting, the board will be reviewing a letter from the town manager to CCTV Incorporated regarding the town's decision not to renew their contract upon its expiration, which is slated to be September 30th, 2018, and having that become a town department. But that would be the subject perhaps of more discussion and review when the town manager returns. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that Dave Wood, who is CMLP's director, received a message from Brian Allen of Princeton, Mass., who was the supervisor on the municipal aid crews from Massachusetts, who went down to Florida to assist with the disaster recovery. Mr. Allen had left a message for Dave that said that the CMLP workers did, quote, "one heck of a job. They represented the town and CMLP and Concord extremely well, and they were very hardworking." He closed by thanking the town and saying it was an absolute pleasure to work with our guys. So I wanted to be able to share that with the board and the citizens, and particularly to thank the CMLP workers who went down there, because it was very, very, very well received.
That's great, thank you.
And all are safe, I assume.
Yes, yep, home and safe, absolutely. They returned yesterday.
Well, I hope you can extend our good wishes and thanks to the crew and to Dave for not only being able to spare those guys, but for all the hard work they did. That's just great.
Yep, absolutely.
Any other questions? or-
Regarding your clarification on the parking, you were mentioning something with the journal, that there was misinformation in that?
Yeah,
or-
one of the comments that that Planning and Land Management heard is that it was said that there weren't other alternate forms of payment that were accepted in the meters, that it was card or pay by phone only, but they do still accept coin. So,
Let's make sure we get information clear, right? I mean, what's up?
I don't know if it's my place to say this in a meeting, but that's not what was in the story. I wrote the story, and basically it was about meters between up there where the library is, up to Thoreau Street. And all the information came from Planning and Land Management, and those spots are paid by phone. And that was the article. It was about those spots, not about the other meters. The article never said the other meters, never mentioned those. It was about the meters in that specific spot where Concord Academy is. You can go back and read the story. It's ironclad. Everything in there is accurate.
And I do think that the controversy that we're hearing, it has to do with the Main Street parking. So that I think is still kind of an issue that we, at some point, may need to take another
That's the
look
one
at.
that was subject to the historical commissioners.
Yeah.
right, well, Marcia Rasmussen, the Director of Planning and Land Management, received several folks that came in and were calling, citing the article perhaps wrongly, but were led to believe that coin was still not able to be used, and we just wanted to clarify that it is in most of the spots.
Is there going to be a public meeting room for committees at the 105, at the new property over?
55 Church
Yes,
Street?
50.
Yes. Yeah, so there's a conference room there right now. I think comfortably it could fit perhaps a dozen people at a conference table. Interestingly, we have to find some money in our budget to purchase furniture, but so it looks much larger now than it will be once we get a conference table in there. We're also looking to hook up a system that isn't as robust as the one in here, but something where we could have audio visual and some assisted listening devices. So it's progress that is
Another
happening over
option
time.
between-
Yeah. And I did speak with Jean Goldsberry from the Disability Commission and offered that they may find it more comfortable to meet there. They're meeting in the smaller conference room at Harvey Wheeler, but it's very hard to maneuver around that table. And this area, although, couldn't probably have more than a dozen people comfortably, certainly has more area to maneuver around. It's also fully ADA accessible right across the hall from the restroom. So I think, I believe they're going to take us up on that after their October meeting.
That's great.
We can assume that the building will be fully wired for town IT services and Wi-Fi?
Yeah, most of the building was already wired. We had a couple of different connections that had to go in, but Mark Howell, who's our chief information officer, has said that, you know, basically they can flip the switch and turn the building on by middle of next week. So we're planning on moving over the computers and phones by Wednesday of next week.
And we need 3 more members for the Affordable Housing Committee we're looking for?
Officially, yes, I have 1 or 2 folks coming to join, to visit the
Okay.
meeting tomorrow, so
Great.
hopefully
That'll get up and
get the
going.
numbers up there.
Great. Any other comments? We will then move along to the approval of the Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee has their calendar, which I believe there's copies in the room. The 2 most notable coming up, Veterans Day flag retirement at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery is on Saturday, November 11th at 8 a.m., and the tree lighting in Monument Square will be on Sunday, December 3rd, and the parade's about 5 p.m. with the ceremony at 5:15 p.m. I don't know if there's anybody who would like to make a comment regarding that, or move along then to.
Just that the tree lighting, excuse me, just that the tree lighting is going to be run in conjunction with the Recreation Department.
Oh, that's
This
great.
year's first time, right? First
Correct.
time.
That's great.
Good.
That's good. Do we need to
We have to
approve the
approve it?
public ceremonies? So I move to,
Motion to that effect?
I move to approve Public Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee 2017-18 calendar of events as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That carries. We now have the continued public hearing from last time. I believe that had been continued, so we need to reopen it. I would take a motion to,
I move to reopen the public hearing for the gas main petition to National Grid at 734 858 Main Street.
we've been notified that Public Works is.
Second.
I second that.
Second, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public Works is working with National Grid, and they have recommended continuing that to the next meeting on October 2nd at 7:05 PM.
Move to continue the public hearing to October 2nd at 7:05.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We now will move to update on the Minuteman National Historic Park. Mr. Dunn, Superintendent Dunn. Welcome.
Thank you. Just, thank you for the invitation. I'm
Just for the record, identify yourself.
sure, BJ Dunn, and I'm the relatively new superintendent at Minuteman National Historical Park. And, the park, as you all know, covers 3 towns, Concord, Lincoln, and Lexington. So I've had the pleasure a couple months ago of meeting with the Lincoln Select Board, kind of chose them intentionally. They were in the middle of the park, and now here, and maybe in a month or 2, I'll get down to Lexington. So thank you for the invitation. Just to clarify, I have 10, about
Be fine, yeah.
10 minutes or so. Just thought I would start with a quick introduction of myself. It's hard to believe. I think I'm in year 30 of my career with the National Park Service, which included seasonal time at a number of different parks in the Northeast. More recently, kind of launching my career in leadership and management in the Park Service, I was part of the Marsh-Billings Rockefeller National Historical Park. The opening team for that park back in 1998 up in Vermont. Was there for 5 years. Then transferred to St. Gaudens National Historic Site, the home of the sculptor in Cornish, New Hampshire, and was there for 5 years. From that point, I headed down to Philadelphia, where I just transferred from, but was the deputy superintendent at Independence National Historical Park which is a World Heritage Site and has these iconic resources of Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell, and actually manages a few other sites in Philadelphia. I was there for just a little over 7 years, so arrived here in January. My style, some of you I've had chance to have some conversations with already, but just by my nature, I like to try to build consensus when I can. I enjoy working with folks on projects. I typically try to look for win-win sorts of situations. I'm all about realizing that sometimes all parties at the table need to give a little bit, including the National Park Service. So feel free to remind me of that in the future if need be. But I will always err on the side of preservation because that's my job. In the National Park Service, we manage these resources for perpetuity. So in the final end, usually if people are asking me for decisions and input, I'm going to err on the side of preservation. Trying to spend my first year here really not having to make any major decisions. We'll see if that happens. I think it's really important. I'm hoping to be here longer than 7 years this time around. I think it's really important for any new leader coming in to spend the first year listening, observing, getting to know the park staff, getting to know the communities and neighbors and partners of this park, of which there are a lot. So I've been having a good time doing that so far. Some quick statistics that I thought you might be interested in, and then I'll tell you quickly about a couple of things that I'm working on that I think might be of interest to you. The visitation at the park, and again, this is park-wide, so the park through all 3 towns, was up 8.8% last year, 1,049,000 visitors. Some of that increase attributed to 2016 was the centennial for the National Park Service, so there was a lot of additional advertising paid for by partners of the National Park Service that doesn't typically exist. But Minuteman appears, when I look at the visitor stats, has been tracking just around 1 million visitors for about the past decade or so. Economically, the value that this park brings to the communities, again, across the towns to the region, there are economic data reports done every few years. The most recent, 2015, is that Minuteman brought just over $55 million of economic value to this region. So it's a little bit more substantial than folks realize. But when you think about visitors coming in, buying gas, hotel rooms, eating out, buying gifts, et cetera, and it equates to approximately 813 jobs in the local economy. I'd like to say that a lot of those jobs were at the park, but the park staff is actually quite lean and mean. The most recent year was approximately 24 full-time equivalencies. So at the moment, there are 17 of us, including myself, full-time at the park, and the remaining is seasonal employees in maintenance interpretation. And that's down fairly significantly from 12, 15 years ago. At the high point, there were 38 full-time equivalencies. And again, we're at about 24 right now. So we're doing a lot to serve increasing visitation with fewer staff. Some projects that I thought you would be interested in hearing about. One of the really exciting things that drew my attention to this park and thinking about coming here was 2025. That will be, I see heads nodding, people realizing, doing the math quickly, that will be the 250th anniversary of that famous shot heard round the world. Some folks, and I'm going to leave copies back here, folks from the public or the select board are interested in picking up. But in 2016, I was very aware of this at my time at Independence. There was actually a public law that was passed by Congress, Public Law 114-196, which is the United States Semi-Quincentennial Commission Act of 2016. Essentially, there is a formal commission that is being pulled together. I think the last appointee, a presidential appointee, may have just happened within the last few weeks. There are 33 members, including 4 members of the U.S. Senate, 4 members of the representatives. There are 4 cabinet-level members, including the Secretary of Interior. The Director of the Park Service is an ex officio member, along with many private citizens. And they are to convene their first meeting at Independence Hall. And they have 2 years to prepare a report to Congress and to the President, making recommendations about how the nation might go about doing celebrations for the 250th. Again, that group is somewhat Philadelphia-centric, and they're really focused a lot on Philadelphia, so I was kind of joking on my way up here that I was actually going to a park where the story began. And on that note, there's a second group that you may want to be aware of, which informally refers to itself as Rev 250, and this is a Massachusetts-based group. Just recently signed a memorandum of agreement in March, Evacuation Day, and I have one. I was having printing problems right before I ran over here, so I only have one copy of that, but I can provide additional copies or send email links if you would like. The commission is comprised of 8 standing members, including a representative from the governor's office, Massachusetts State Travel and Tourism, a number of others. The group is really organized under the auspices of the Massachusetts Historical Society, and the National Park Service is a ex officio advisor within that group of 8. And so they're just very early on in planning stages for events statewide here in Massachusetts. Not clear yet if who the National Park Service representative will be, if that'll be from Minuteman, Boston National Historical Park, Adams, or yet to be determined. So a lot happening towards 2025. And I look forward to working with all 3 towns. And I'm guessing with the Concord Ceremonies and Celebrations Committee, I'm going to reach out to them soon to have a kickoff meeting to talk about some of this stuff. I will, of note, I kind of started out with a visitation stat. Just of interest, I went back and pulled stats from Minuteman because this is the impact to the park when these major anniversaries come about. 1975-76, there was a bump of almost 431,000 visitors to Minuteman National Historical Park during that time of the bicentennial. In the year 2000, there was a bump of just under 135,000 visitors. So even in the 225th, there was a bump up. I fully suspect we'll have a bump up here during that year. Quickly, spending another thing that interested me a great deal in coming to this park was the agricultural use of this park. I grew up in New Hampshire. I'm a gardener. I have a local community garden spot over on Walden Street, which is great. They do a great job organizing that stuff here in the town, and happy to be partaking in that. Right now, the park is has special use permits with 6, actually just 7. The 7th is about to leave, different farmers in the community, but one thing I would really like to work on over time is expanding the agricultural use of this park. I'm keenly aware that we have a number of vacant buildings, and so I've been meeting with certain folks in town and just talking with others about how some of this stuff could possibly be incorporated into a package deal over time. I heard well, I guess the parking comments were slightly different. I've been observing the parking situation over at the North Bridge a fair amount recently. We just had the opportunity for a free funded, it's an internal planning process, but a group of transportation planners will work with the park over this next year to look at congestion within the park, and that's both pedestrian, bicycles, traffic, parking. So internally, we're kind of going to go through a process to look at congestion, and we'll see what that leads to. Also, just recently met with some folks with the Envision Concord. I've been seeing it in the paper. I kept missing the meetings, just happened to run into somebody at the agricultural fair, so I'm now excited. I'll be attending my first formal Envision Concord meeting and look forward to getting the park more involved with that, because I think we should be. So I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, so maybe I'll pause there and give you a chance for questions or comments.
I would just comment that you're filling very large shoes. Our previous.
Huge shoes. Huge shoes, yes. It's a little daunting, I have to say. I won't say which park, but in my past career, I came into a park and the community relations were not so good, so it kind of felt very easy to just go up, and here I'm a little nervous that, but I also, when I get a little down at the end of some days, I say, well, my predecessor was here for 3 years, I think. So I got to give myself that first year at least to get through, and then I can start being critical on myself, so.
We certainly appreciate you coming tonight. Anybody have questions?
Welcome from all of
Yeah.
us. I'm really glad that you're here. I just had a very small question. In reading through some of the visitation stats, are there seasonal highs and lows to the park visitation? Like
Yes.
winter is a low point, I would
Correct,
guess?
correct.
So most of these numbers are spring.
Heavy visitation here, as you would all guess correctly, is around the Patriots' Day events. April is, which is interesting for us because we're just onboarding our seasonal staff at that point, so it makes it a lot of training and on-the-ground training and running. And fall foliage is also, my understanding, things will start to pick up here pretty quickly over the next week or so. But April and fall foliage are the busy periods.
What percent are foreign people coming to visit?
I don't know that, the answer to that. I know at Independence, it was pretty high. It was close to 33% were foreign visitors. My guess, just based on observation and the number, the buses that are coming through, is I don't think we're experiencing that sort of foreign visitation. I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say less than 10%.
Have efforts been made to make it accommodating for disabled people, handicapped, and
The
access to the
Yep.
various locations?
Yep. The Northbridge, both visitor centers, we have 2 visitor centers, of course. One of the projects that the park is undertaking starting shortly, actually in a few weeks, is some rehab work to the Battle Road Trail, which runs from Miriam's Corner out to close to 95 Fisk Hill, but some of that includes some accessibility improvements up to the boardwalks. But yeah, some of our buildings are historic. And that's kind of the nature without, rehab. They're not going to be accessible, but where we can, we work to improve that.
I'm very encouraged and hopeful about trying to see if we can form some kind of partnership to move forward on the housing in connection with agriculture. I think that's a terrific opportunity for the town and the park to do something collectively, especially with agriculture so important in the
Yep.
town. So
I fully agree with that, and I'm excited about it. I recently, the past couple months, I've met with director of the Concord Housing Foundation, if I'm getting that correct, and just also recently met with Marcia Rasmussen and spent some time with her kind of talking about some early ideas. I'm not sure that I had kind of a full agenda for her. She took a lot of notes. I haven't heard back from her, but I'm sure I will soon. I will soon. But I am there's a lot of opportunity for Minuteman, again, across all 3 towns, but much more so for Concord and Lincoln. I'm pondering the idea of pulling together some sort of a working group maybe in the fall, just to kind of sort through some of the ideas that exist. I'm trying to be careful again not to necessarily jump to the first thing that presents itself. This is definitely one of those win-win-win situations. The park needs revenue. I don't know if I mentioned our budget's a little over $2 million, but you did hear me describe the staffing situation. So increasing park revenue is of keen interest to me. We have some vacant structures. I'm hearing concerns about affordable housing in town, and particularly with the Agricultural Committee. And I would love to see more of the fields in use, because if they're in use agriculturally, that means the park staff doesn't need to maintain them with mowing. So give me a little bit of time, but I definitely will be working,
I think
on
it's
this.
also, BJ, it sounds to me like such a interesting opportunity and an interesting partnership that my suspicion would be there might be some external sources of funds that we might be able to collectively tap if we got this organized. So I think it could really be really attractive for the town and
Right.
of course for the park. So
And I should have mentioned not only in the caretaking of the fields, but also of our buildings, because we have a number of buildings here in town that are not currently being used, which from a preservation standpoint, it's better to have a building being used for a purpose than sitting empty and locked up. So more to come on that.
welcome to town.
But we do have the situation also, I think our state representative is the chair of the tourism committee.
Okay.
So Corey Atkins is probably somebody can get involved, and the person who's the head of the director of the Mass Historic Society came from the Concord Museum. And is a Concord resident,
Yeah,
so
yep.
we have fairly good input,
Yep.
as we should, but
That
thank you
we
so
do.
much for
Great.
coming, and
Thank you
I
so much.
also want to thank you. I was, had been concerned about the lot that's right across the street from the parking for the Wayside House and we're next to the Hawthorne Inn. And that had not been cut, and I drove by there the other day, and it looks lovely now. So I hope that we can keep that looking good, because it does make a difference.
Was
to have-
just recently mown, and on the to-do list we're working on is additional restoration or replanting up behind the Wayside from the
Right.
recent tornado. There's more tree restoration or tree planting work to happen up there.
Thank you so much.
Great.
and, we'll stay in touch. The next, we have an update on the fire department emergency management matters, the interim fire chief, Tom Judge. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, thank you. Tom Judge, Interim Fire Chief. Thank you for inviting me to give you an update on the fire department. As you know, we've had kind of an interesting year. Started off a little ironically, early January when we had a fire at Station 2. And we're actually just getting to the point now where we're winding down from that and getting back to normal. But that night, we lost the use of the building for 6 months. We lost about 30% of our fleet in that fire. We lost Engine 4, Engine 8, the newest ambulance in our fleet, A3, and our small brush truck, Engine 6. With tremendous support from the town and tremendous support from other town departments, and I'm not going to risk naming any because I will definitely miss somebody. But we had tremendous support from everyone to get back on our feet and be operating the next day. That's the one thing we learned, is that when you're the fire department and you have a fire, you still have to provide services in the morning. So with a lot of help, we got that done. I'm happy to report that on Wednesday this week, we will be taking delivery of 2 new ambulances. One of them is a scheduled replacement, and the other is the replacement for A3 that was destroyed in the fire. About 3 or 4 weeks ago, we put a new Engine 4 in service, and that was the pump that replaced the engine which was destroyed in the fire, and that was actually the source of the fire, Engine 4. We have another engine on the production line, which was a scheduled replacement. So we've had quite a busy year with rebuilding our building, rebuilding our fleet, and learning an awful lot about the aftermath of a fire that honestly, for a fire department, we never had occasion to know before. We're not unaccustomed to going to somebody's house that's on fire, mitigating the problem, doing our best to help them out and get them through maybe the next 24 hours, but then we move on. And this event has, I think, in some ways, it's been beneficial, in that it has definitely given us a completely new level of empathy for someone who experiences a building fire or a house fire and dealing with the aftermath. Because we've learned a lot. It was quite an experience. And just, again, tremendous support from the town and people in town. I had a gentleman the day after the fire, I don't believe he was a Concord resident, but I do recall that he told me he had a plane at Hanscom, and he called the next day to tell me that he had a fire truck that he had as a collector's piece, but it worked, and he was offering it to us if we wanted to use it. A chief from the Cape called Chief Gautreau the next morning and offered him a fire truck if we wanted to use it. So just a tremendous outpouring of support. More recently, we've had a lot going on. We've been doing quite a bit of training. Last month, we put every member of the department through a water rescue training program at Walden Pond, which was it was taught by one of our lieutenants, who is also a technical rescue specialist, and he teaches water rescue. And that was very well received, and all of the members got a great deal out of it. It was excellent training. At the moment, we have driver training going on for the entire department. This was, I have to give him credit, this was Chief Gautreau's vision. He wanted to have a baseline training for every member of the department for driving trucks. It is one weakness coming out of the academy. There is no driver training, so it's complete. Driver training is completely on the job, and Chief Gautreau was very passionate about getting everybody through at least a baseline truck driving class, and it nothing to do with emergency driving, just basic truck driving and understanding the difference between driving your Prius and driving a 22-ton fire truck with air brakes. So that's ongoing right now. One group went through last week, and over the next 2 weeks, the other 3 groups will be going through it. So that's very good news for us. And I learned this morning from the assistant town manager that there may be some insurance benefit to that too, which is it's a nice side benefit.
Take it.
You may have heard in the news last week about the terrorist training that took place, or the response to terrorism training that took place down the Cape. Just so the board knows, the fire department, Concord Fire Department, was represented there. Our tech rescue specialist, Lieutenant Nelson, was there representing the town with the District 14 tech rescue team. And 2 of our firefighters, Will Rolfe and Peter Ostrowski, were there representing Concord with the District 14 communications team. I worked in the command post over the period, and it was a really well-run, very educating event. It brought firefighters and fire officers and National Guard from all over the state together, working side by side with people that you had not met before that morning, and it was a tremendous exercise. Everybody involved learned an awful lot. So that brings us pretty much up to where we are now, which is September, and we just heard about the tornado, so we were just reminded of the tornado, so that's gonna segue right into September being Emergency Preparedness Month. And there's been a lot of attention on Irma, Jose, and Maria, 3 devastating storms, and it's shed a lot of light on the need to be prepared. We have just put up, last week or the week before, we put up 2 links on our website. One is to ready.gov, that's a FEMA website, and the other is an American Red Cross website. Both of them are essentially links to checklists of what you can do and what you can have at home to be prepared. And it's the spotlight's on it now because of hurricane season, but I can't encourage people enough to take this seriously year-round, because as we learned a year ago, August, when we had a tornado run through about a mile of town, the unexpected can absolutely happen at any time. We deal with blizzards. A few years ago, there was the ice storm in the western part of the state that knocked them out for weeks. So it's, I think it's really incumbent on all of us to do what we can at home. And just to wrap it up with what the National Emergency Preparedness Month slogan is for this year: disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Have any questions or comments?
It's been a remarkable year for the department and everything it's had to deal with. So I'm curious with the ambulance in West Concord disabled. Were we relying on mutual aid, or were we able to use the equipment from Concord Center? How did you manage the loss of the engine?
Well, we staff the two ambulances at least 12 hours a day. And the ideal situation is to have a third in reserve. So we made an arrangement with the dealer that we work with a lot, Greenwood Motors, and we actually have a vehicle that was essentially leased from them. You may have seen it in town. It says Marshfield on the side of it. So we've had that for a short while, and that'll be going back hopefully within a week or two. But that was how we got through that period.
Good. When you receive the new ambulance, it will then need to be outfitted, or does it come ready to go?
Two of them are arriving on Wednesday, and one of them will be ready to go in service within a couple of days. So that one's all outfitted. The other one will be all outfitted. The only thing that remains is to move the radios from one vehicle, the one that we're trading in, into the one that we're receiving. So I expect within 2 weeks we'll have both in service.
Does the Concord Fire Department have jurisdiction with over Walden Pond, or is that totally state? We had a couple, obviously, drownings there, and I'm wondering, you're talking about water safety.
Right, so for calls like that, the Concord Fire has jurisdiction.
And there has been training on that. Is there anything proactive that can be done in terms of signage or?
It's, I think one of the things at Walden Pond is the events that have taken place tend to take place out of the roped area, which is where Walden is they're prepared to make rescues if necessary. The events that we've seen have been outside of the roped area or on the backside of the pond.
Chief, on Ag Day, you guys also had an event over at the police and the fire station where I think you had a lot of visitors.
Yes.
How did it go? I hadn't had a chance to
It
hear
went very
from-
well, and I was unfortunately out of town that day, but the folks that ran it told me that it went very well received, a lot of visitors, a lot of positive comments.
Right,
Yeah.
that's terrific.
Have we had is it generally a steady amount or sort of a normal amount of home fires in the town, or how does that work? Have we had?
We haven't had anything out of the ordinary. It's a fairly static number. I mean, we will tend to have between 2 and 4. This is off the top of my head, between 2 and 4 serious fires of note per year, and then we have a lot of fires that are caught early by detection systems.
I was going to add, early in my career, I worked with the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, and we would go through all the various accidents, and I was amazed at how important having the fire detectors and the CO2 detectors, and I think people should be reminded, check your batteries, make sure they work, because this is kind of the time of the year and during the winter time, and also at that point, people smoked much more, and that was a major cause of fires. But sort of leaving candles going when people go to bed, that type of thing. Prevention is obviously far more important than anything else that can be done. And so I hope that people are reminded of that, and I'm sure the website will put that out.
It is, and we do, and also, as you mentioned that, we're coming up on the time of year where you change your clocks, and that's the NFPA always reminds people, change your clocks, change your batteries. Anecdotally, one of the things that I almost always find at a house fire is it never fails to amaze me to see a smoke detector with its cover flipped down and the battery on a table next to it, because it was troublesome, so somebody took the battery out and put it aside. And that would have given some early notification. So I guess if your smoke detector is troublesome, replace it.
Yeah, it's not that expensive, and certainly is a much easier course. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is the discussion of the Dog Park Feasibility Study Committee. I want to just preface The purpose of the dog park feasibility study is to explore the opportunity to create one or more dog parks in Concord where residents may exercise their dogs in a secure and friendly environment. The town's 2015 Open Space and Recreation Plan states that in a 2014 citizen survey, the need for a formal dog park was raised as a community desire and requires further evaluation. Part of the evaluating of the feasibility of creating a dog park is to identify the sites where a dog park could be located. The evaluation of public land for possible future dog park is not intended to influence the discussion of whether it would be appropriate to require dogs to be on leash in certain town-owned conservation parcels. That determination will be made by the Natural Resource Commission. So I don't want to have people get too concerned about what the feasibility, that somehow there's a hidden agenda here. We're really just following up on what was proposed a number of years ago. And Mike, I think you put this together, and I thought it was excellent. So I think the plan would be for, at the next meeting, to adopt this. I think we already have a number of people who have put green cards in order to join the committee. The one change in the committee charge, this one versus we talked about at the last meeting, is this would be 7 citizens at large, at least 2 of which should be dog owners. That doesn't mean that it can't be more than that, but I think the last charge said 5, and some people were concerned that that was sort of stacking the deck unfairly. So
I had 2 concerns the last time. One was that, and the other was that it was just clear that this wasn't to be seen as where are we going to put a dog park, but whether or not it's appropriate for the town to have a dog park, and then where might we put it.
and the cost and other aspects.
Yeah, I just didn't want to seem like we've decided
So
to
there
do
is-
it,
yeah,
and we're trying
there's
to
that
figure out where to
difference.
put it.
Right.
Yeah.
Not meaning to be prejudicial, but I don't think we had decided that we were going to do it.
No, I guess that's a good way to do it, is one step at a time. I mean, it's an amenity for dogs and dog owners in the community that really doesn't exist yet. So it's determining the need, or is it a good idea for our community, and then moving to the next.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be a second. I think this committee can do both
Can
of them.
continue on, but it's the first step in the
First
analysis.
step, so,
That's great.
good.
So we'll plan to sort of have deliberations at the next meeting, I guess, in terms of setting the committee up.
This is on the.
Next item is a discussion of comments on Envision Concord, which we've had some reference to, and I think in our package, there was about a 12 or 13-page document which
25.
detailed all the work that was being done in this regard, so.
Lot.
Anybody would jump in with whatever comments you.
I just thought the material at this time was incredibly
It's- yeah.
comprehensive. And, I know they're reaching out to all kinds of groups and committees in town to get additional input. I know that from committees I'm a liaison to, but, so I think that's terrific.
A lot of progress already, I
A lot
thought.
of progress. And it's, it's a big committee, and it's, so you get big and it gets tricky. But I was very impressed with,
Yeah, after going through it, it's just their comprehensive considerations of all.
And
you
very
know,
well
really-
organized,
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought, and it sort of laid it out in a very logical, so that it will be available to the public to review and to have any input, so.
I think, given our position of having created the committee, that report will come to us, so I think we should be sort of open-minded, not trying to form any judgments yet, but just be continuing to encourage them to reach out to as many folks as they can and get as broad-based input. And I think one of the things that we might think about, it'll come down the road, so we don't need to do anything now, but they're holding a number of forums and meeting with lots of folks, but my suspicion is when it finally comes to us, we should be anticipating having hearings or forums about it on our behalf, so that we can hear from citizens, we can hear from the committee, because we're going to be asked to adopt this, and so I think we should be thinking ahead. When is it going to get to us? When might we schedule it?
And I think the group's been having public participation at certain points, but then there's other points where they're more working sessions that the public is allowed to attend. But I think that was some of the comments we've been hearing here and there about participation, but I think they're doing a great job.
Yeah. So I think we
Most of their meetings are relatively early in the morning.
Yeah.
So that may be.
7:30 a.m.
That-
every other Friday.
So I just think we should plan ahead a little bit to try to anticipate when it might be to us, and we'll need time on our own to discuss it and think about it, and then I think we're gonna need to
Have the
have
hearing.
a broader forum to do it. But I think it's
So
very
let me
impressive.
ask a question. Would you think it would be appropriate for the select board as town leaders to offer our opinions about any or all of these areas? This is the SWOT analysis. It's some 35 pages worth of detailed analysis. My understanding is that the committee met 10 different times to develop this detailed framework. But, I think the idea here is to look for input, not rubber stamping. And I'm wondering whether this committee, as the select board, also wants to participate in the process by offering what we think are important, town values that may have been missed, or support the ones that are here. My sense is perhaps we would want to do that, but it's a question.
I think they're looking for individual input. I know I had a conversation with one of the members kind of about biking, and he said, it's a larger issue of transportation. But it seems to me that we could become, as a town, much more bike-friendly. He suggested just writing them as an individual, as a citizen, that they're looking at all of those, and those are important. I think that the difficulty kind of as a group to do it, where we don't know kind of what their final result is going to be, might be sort of difficult and second guessing at this point.
So I'm not suggesting that we're opining on what's here before us. Every board and committee has been asked to
Right.
send a letter, a submission to the comprehensive long-range plan, which encompasses their particular mission statement. And so I think all of those boards and committees are doing that. I know that I personally have gone on Envision Concord and entered my thoughts or comments along the way as a citizen, but not as the board. So the question was, is it appropriate for this board to think about crafting our vision for, and thinking about a resilient economy and what it takes from our perspective that may be missing from the dialogues that have happened so far, that we talk about 1 million visitors a year from the national park, bringing in an economic value to our community. Do we have the right resources to support that? Are we economically viable? Those kinds of questions that may not be addressed directly by others in the planning process is my question. And if you think it's probably not
I guess
appropriate, we can be
I
reactive.
would have, in reading the handout they gave us, it's more, I definitely participate as an individual. All these surveys and whatnot are pretty extensive, but I think it's definitely important if we see them, if say the process is missing a section or is not really being inclusive of everyone, that's definitely a time where I think the board should kind of ask that question. But I think otherwise, I mean, for me, I see that all the town values being discussed are really, I don't see, it's balanced, it's addressing economic, housing, sustainability, I mean, it's just go down the list, it's all there, but.
I think it's a great question to dump on Jane.
It's a great question. I think I tend to, I've looked at it with the eye, is there a missing?
Right.
Did they, I didn't see anything, but what we might do is we might simply ask them. Would it be helpful to
Yeah,
them to
what
have
ca-
our input at
Sure,
this time?
sure.
Or should we wait until the committee has done its work and take it as a final report and address it?
So remember, what they're asking for is a perspective from our worldview, just as they're asking the Historical Commission, which will submit a letter, and CSAC and the Finance, Committee.
They're
So-
sort of working on our behalf, though, and.
But we're not reviewing those submissions.
So let's ask them.
And I think there's some direct government interests here, particularly in a
Yeah.
resilient economy and what role we can play in the way that we can encourage or incentivize a business community where other aspects of the community probably don't address that. Or the way that we have a transparent and open government, which others probably aren't addressing in their comprehensive long-range plan, but it's inherent in the way that we conduct our business. It might
Yeah,
be
I
valuable
get
to
that.
offer
Yeah, no,
that
that's,
to
I'll look
comprehensive
through
long-range
you,
plan.
like, through that lens, as, is government being included in the process or the values discussed?
I think there's consensus, and probably makes sense to pass that on to Jane, and she'd be the contact person.
Yeah. Maybe she's watching this evening.
Hi, John.
Some so. Should we move on to item 10, which is the W.R. Grace access easement for Knox Trail Road. This is needed for an ongoing Superfund requirements, and the town's attorney had emailed that this, they felt, would probably be the final easement. So I think that's in the packet and sign, and unless anybody has objections or comments.
No, I move to grant W.R. Grace with a non-exclusive access easement on certain areas of the property at 37 Knox Trail, Acton, and 214Y Main Street, Concord, for the sole purpose of performing its environmental obligations, subject to the terms and conditions provided herein, agreement dated September 25th, 2017, as drafted by Town Council.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Next item is a discussion confirming the Select Board's 2015 vote to support Mothers Out Front resolution to eliminate leaks of natural gas from the utility distribution system. This was something that, as I understand, was a letter was sent to the governor back in 2015 that the House and Senate did not act on it, and this is an effort to propose that they review it and act upon it at this time.
So do we have enough information, have there been changes to these pieces of legislation that's come back to this board? I don't know that our position would have changed, but did the legislation or proposed legislation change significantly that we'd be asked to reconfirm our commitment?
Some people from Mothers Out Front will be at the next meeting on October 2nd to sort of discuss this thing. Jane just wanted this to have, you guys have just an initial, to tee it up, and included is like a copy of, which is from 2015. The agenda says 2016, but it's 2015. Just sort of provide background, and then I think like a few members of Mothers Out Front will be here next Monday to really present before the board.
Hopefully
And
we'll be supportive of this, and
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, we were open before, we probably would be now too. I'm
Can-
just curious, what are we supporting
Yeah.
that's different? What we're being asked to do that's different than what we
maybe
were
make sure we
knowledgeable?
get a hold of Mothers Out Front
Yeah,
and
sounds
make
like-
sure they've got that question.
Yeah,
And let's
that sounds
let's
good.
definitely find out what our state reps have been
It
doing
was,
about it.
uh,
Hopefully, they're,
Eldridge.
Jamie Eldridge and Dykeman,
Yeah.
who were sponsors in the past, and I know it had undergone some changes of legislation in trying to get it passed last session, and it failed to make it all the way through. So I don't know the
You
status
want me to
now.
give Senator Eldridge a call and see
Who's
what's
supported.
up with,
What's up with
This
it?
one,
Yeah, that's a
okay.
good idea. Thank you.
Obviously, it's gonna cost the gas
Representative.
companies some funds in order to remedy the situation, and so I'm sure they have arguments as to why they shouldn't do it, or they should do it on a longer base schedule.
oh, they're gonna be here next
A
Monday.
different-
We
a
might
different
be able to
group.
ask them.
And I think a couple of times when they've been here on other
We have asked
matters, they've been probed about this issue, and somewhat take the I know nothing about it approach, but.
Yeah.
We are now, item 12, public comments. Is anybody present here would like to make a comment?
I'm surprised that Ms. Proctor doesn't want to make a comment to remind everybody of the event the league is having on Wednesday.
On Wednesday, September 27th.
Wednesday, September 27th at the library. Yeah, I think we should like to hear about that.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Diane Proctor, 57 Sudbury Road. On Wednesday, September 27th, at 7 o'clock for some refreshments, and at 7:30 for a program at the Trinity Episcopal Church on Elm Street. We have four town moderators. Our
We
present.
being the League of Women
We mean the
Voters.
League of Women Voters of Concord and Carlisle. Thank you, Mr. McKean. We have four town moderators speaking. The first is our own Carmen Reese and her two predecessors, Eric Van Loon and Ned Perry. And then from Carlisle, Wayne Davis. And they will be addressing the following four concerns. First, very briefly, then the time for exchanges, a brief history of the town meeting. Then it's the way in which the warrant articles are organized for such a town meeting. How does this thing come together? Thirdly, what are the strengths of a town meeting, perhaps trespassing on some of the deficits? And then last but not least, its future, and what kind of opportunities lie ahead to continue to make this a successful endeavor. This is an important time, I think, for all of us to have a chance to speak without the consequence of votes or anything else about the way in which we might manage, this whole process more fully and more richly for all citizens.
Terrific.
thank you.
Yeah.
It does lead me to ask the question from probably those who were at the Saturday event to discuss a little bit about that training session for boards and committees. I was not there.
I know.
Sorry.
You were missed. You were
It
missed.
was
out.
a very nice, can I do it? It was a very nice
Absolutely.
event. First, I want to thank the town clerk and Andrew and the public affairs officer, Aaron, for all the help
Great job,
they did in making it a straightforward and successful event. And then Steve and Tom, along with Lynn Huggins and Carmen Reese, were the presenters there. I think there were about, as I counted, there were about 30 people, I think something like that.
You could pat yourself on the back.
Oh, love that format at the end. Was really good.
But I thought it
really
was very
good. Yeah.
successful. I
Yeah.
got some emails after the event for it. The comment most often, other than they liked it, was this should be mandatory.
Mm.
And I don't know about that, but I think they meant by that everybody should have to listen to this stuff and have a chance to do it.
It was taped, so
Was
it'll
taped,
be
it'll be up
available.
online. In addition to the content of the program itself, the one real improvement is an updating of the committee handbook that you worked on and Carrie worked on, the town clerk worked on, that will, do you have it?
Great resource. Wonderful
2017,
resource,
and that
yeah.
includes just a wealth of information, plus all the laws that are relevant to committee members, open meeting law, ethics law, and the like, so.
And the changes from the last time, because it keeps changing as part of the.
It's constantly
So
changing.
we've got
yeah.
that, and we printed a number of them, so this'll be handed out to every committee, new person who comes on a committee will get a copy of that, so that was a big,
It'll be posted on the website too.
and it is on the website, yeah, so. I thought it was successful, as I've said before, going forward, we're gonna try to shrink it by having some of the more straightforward, important but straightforward, like what's the open meeting law, and like
Technical, yeah.
have those done in a studio and put online, and then have the more interactive ones about running meetings and running public hearings, have that be so that we get a lot more interactions. That'll be the plan going forward for 2018. So, but it was,
Yeah, I really enjoyed your last segment of kind of a very open format where I thought the audience felt very comfortable, just questions, very natural conversation, discussion with everyone. And
Yeah.
it was really great.
well, so it was good. Had a good time.
Sorry, I missed it.
We'll get you next time.
Please, yes.
Sure.
I just thank you, I'm Janet Benvenuti, 35 Jonas Brown Circle. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. And I actually walked away feeling that it was leadership training at its best. And you did a fabulous job about how to run a meeting, how you deal with conflict. I know you will have your watch going 2 minutes, but it was just fabulous. It was also a lot of fun. There was time for socialization. You actually designed it so that those of us whose children are older could socialize with folks who have younger ones. My only concern was that Saturday's a busy day for folks who have children, so there are ways to design it so that pieces are online. I would suggest that you consider having it annually. I do think there's a benefit for folks who work for the town who are in leadership roles to have the opportunity to get together. There were 3 attorneys in the room, which always makes me uncomfortable, but you could get factual information, which was fabulous. It also, one of the points that was made was also to consider having consultants participate, and maybe as a requirement for having a contract with the town. It was simply fabulous. I had 3 cups of coffee before I arrived because I thought it would be dry and boring, and it was fun. 6 voices, lots of information, so I commend you all. And it's so good, it shouldn't be a biannual event. It really should be used in.
We wanted to make it annual, but you might recall that the town clerk was on leave last
Yes.
fall, and we just couldn't quite get it together, so.
And the other thing, folks laughed, Steve, when you said, use Twitter and Facebook, but communication is a big
Yeah,
part of it. And because I work with a lot of millennials and folks who are younger, I'm on Twitter all the time. And so there's also that communication of how do people get information today. It's completely different than my generation, which is, online websites and so forth. So, so I just thought it was fabulous. I want to just
Thank you for your
reinforce what you
input.
said.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I was speaking with Erin about that, about possibly doing a little Saturday morning Twitter tutorial to just teach the public how to use Twitter to get information. Real-time information coming in from police, fire, the town itself, any department or committee you're interested in. I mean,
You could just hold a live Twitter conference.
we could. Well, we'd have to spend a lot of time making the names, right, for everyone, but
But it
we're
would be,
trying, we're thinking about
I
that.
think it's important. One of the things I think we don't do a great job of is getting younger people involved in sort of civic engagement. And the more we can do in that, is benefit to everybody, because if you get people involved early, they stay involved. So I think that would be terrific.
Great.
Yes, we are now ready for liaison reports. Mike, do you want to start?
Of course, I'd be happy to do that. I was able to attend briefly the agricultural meeting on the 14th. I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting. They spent a lot of time, though, talking about challenges that farmers face and talking about their input to the long-range plan. I was able to convey our thanks to them for all the hard work they did in getting Ag Day squared away. I was able to attend the Municipal Light Board meeting on the 8th. They spent a lot of time talking about municipal solar. There were some issues about whether or not we would want to try to get solar on Beatty Center and the high school, and they're doing a deeper dive into that, but that was an important issue. They also spent some time bringing folks up to date on the strategic plan for the light plan, and that's going to be a very important thing for the light plan, especially given the new sustainability director that will be coming online and the consequences of Energy Futures Task Force in Article 51. So there was a lot of interest in that, and the room was pretty full. And then I attended the Concord School Committee meeting on the 12th. A relatively straightforward agenda. They did a lot of recognitions of some folks, and they were discussing primarily the district goals and the committee goals for the year. And the issue that I think they were confronting that evening was, the move to change the start time for the high school created a complex scheduling phenomena for the buses, and I think it would be fair to say there were some hiccups.
And
along the
partly, I
road.
gather, one of the issues is some of the private school students who get bused.
Right.
Their time schedule wasn't changed.
Yeah.
and So
it
therefore,
was-
you had
They had a little
another
hiccup,
issue.
but they seemed to be perfectly attentive to the matter, and I'm going to go to school committee meeting tomorrow night, so maybe I'll get an update on that. And I think that's all I've got.
Alice, would you-
Well, in addition to the Light Board, we attended the ceremony at the the Walden Pond Visitor Center.
Oh, yeah.
With the new exhibit that is beautiful. We saw a preview of a new documentary on Walden and on Thoreau, and it was really beautifully well done.
Ken Burns.
Right.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah.
Ken Burns documentary, which I think its debut will be next month. We just got the preview.
Next month, and it was attended by Commissioner Roy from the Recreation Department, Secretary Beaton, Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs, was there.
And Don Henley.
Don Henley was there, and a distant relative of Thoreau.
Yes,
Yes,
It's a-
some cousin from England.
it was a great event. I also attended a Minuteman School Building Committee. Things are continuing to
Yeah, that was a great
progress. I
photo.
think I
Yeah.
sent to you
Wow.
an updated photo from this week, which was the pouring of concrete on the first of the
Excellent.
footing. So we're making progress. It's very real. We also heard a very detailed description or discussion about some of the permitting problems that have been ongoing and having to work through an aggressive schedule with the permitting conditions that are being, put in front of us. It's still we're probably a little bit behind schedule because of permitting issues, but I think we'll pick it up as the project moves forward. Those are the two big ones for me.
Right.
Nothing from the past week, but definitely this week I have affordable housing funding tomorrow. Unfortunately, double booking on Tuesdays, but and then hats on Thursday. So I'll have more to report next time. Sorry.
I attended the Commission on Disability, and they were talking about some of the renovations on Concord Academy. There was a presentation regarding access from the rear and sort of historic issues, a long-range planning request. There was also, there's going to be a presentation of Emerson Arts in the November meeting. And they had a discussion about the town governance workshop, and the Mass Disability Summit, which was going to took place on the 15th. The library committee, Robin Cicchetti of the Concord Carlisle High School head librarian came and discussed the usage of the library by her students. They have a 2-week program of independent study that utilizes the library. And she'd also discussed about a national review of libraries. The library is going to have a collaboration with the League of Women Voters about civil education and town meeting issues. And we discussed whether the select board might better utilize the library for dissemination of information that we have. The CCTV and whatever else is useful, but I think more that we can sort of spread the word, the better. And there was also discussion about their opening now on Sunday morning and getting lots of usage. And they were very pleased with the funding from the town, because I gather that was the issue that had prevented them earlier. And then the last was the Community Preservation Committee. They had the presentation of the various requests that the town would be putting forward. They have the issue of level funding and substantially more request for the funding. And so they're going to have to kind of decide. It's getting tougher and tougher for them. One of the discussions is right now they get the 1.5% addition. They could go up to 3%,
yeah.
but whether there is sufficient support in the town to do that. And as what's happening now is the state proportion of funding is provide percentage getting less and less. So it's a problem they're having to deal with, and we'll kind of see how. I think they try to make an effort to go out and look at everything and see if some of them can be funded over a period of time, whether some of the seed money that they give to a project might be able to be used to raise other funds. They're trying to get the biggest bang out of the bucks if they can. I guess we now are miscellaneous correspondence. I don't know if
I just briefly, was copied on an email to Chris Whalen from the Rotary. They were just asking about inquiring into the timing on when the skateboard park was coming back to the high school or getting. So I just kind of read that. I was just curious. With you going to school committee, I don't know.
I don't know anything about it.
You can ask them.
I'll ask.
Yeah.
Will do. I have two quick ones.
Yeah, please.
We've been asked by the Nanai Committee to develop a proclamation celebrating the 25th anniversary of our sister city relationship, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get it on the agenda for October 2nd. That will depend on appropriate language that I'm hoping will come in.
We're getting a visit.
They're coming in October, in early October. And then there's a delegation from the town that is going in early November to Nanai. And I heard today that they're renaming a road, Concord Road or Street. I'm not sure which it is or where it is, but I suspect we'll visit it. The other kind of correspondence I have is last week we talked about the administrative policy for access to open space, you'll recall.
Yes.
And I've received a number of comments, questions about it, and I'm in the process of preparing a finalized draft. The one thing that came up that I need some guidance on, though, Tom, I think you raised the issue, and that was it doesn't address in the policy anything to do with access, disability access. And my inclination is, since that's such an important topic, I think we would be wise as a select board to not include it in this particular administrative policy, but pick the issue up in general. What disability issues should we be thinking about amending and what particular language we should use and the like? Because on the one hand, you want to make sure you're doing a good job providing access. On the other hand, you don't want to burden the town with unwieldy process or huge expenditures that don't seem to be in anybody's interest. So I don't think I would feel comfortable sticking a sentence in there that says, yeah, and make sure it's, and then having it come back and cause us some problems. But I don't want it to get lost. Right. So if your guidance is to leave it out with the notion that we'll pick it up as a broader issue, then I'll get Andrew the revised access administrative policy, and we'll deal with it on the 2nd.
Big meeting.
Maybe an issue it's worth getting the commission's.
Yeah, we could, if the second meeting is too busy, we could postpone it.
When does the commission next meet?
I think October 5th is the next meeting.
So maybe we should put it off and try to bring this to their attention and ask them what they think.
So the meeting after that will be October 16th.
Yeah, well, let's get it on the agenda for the 16th. And
Okay.
Will you bring it to the Disability
Yes.
Committee's attention then?
Okay.
It's really a two-part question. We'd be perfectly happy to put it in there if we had the right language, and if we don't, how do we deal with it?
I think it, makes sense in that they are conducting kind of a review already of trails and historic and commercial locations on disability, which would then be put into a map, which would be used for visitors and whatever.
Good.
So, I think it'd be nice to have Concord. We voted to be a welcoming community, to kind of go the extra step and be more welcoming to the disabled in a kind of unique
Good.
way.
Let's do it.
So I think that there's the timing works fairly well on that. So, we're now down to committee nominations.
I nominate Sarah Grimwood of 520 Lexington Road, Sigmund Roos of 36 Wood Street, and Mark Hanson of 340 Holden Wood Road to the Pollinator Health Advisory Committee for a term to expire May 31st, 2018.
Not need to vote on that.
Right.
No, but let me note that we still need some additional members to that pollinator committee, so if
Yes,
anybody
pollinator.
out there,
And I move to appoint Linda Corbett of 166 Laurel Street to the Commission on Disability for a term to expire May 31st, 2018. James Smith of 14 Edmonds Lane to the Zoning Board of Appeals as a full member for a term to expire May 31st, 2020.
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
I do note that the ZBA is looking for a new member. Is there anyone-
Additional on.
Additional
to
to.
Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith has been a non-voting member, and he's just moved
Now
up
it'd
to a
be,
full
so it'd be
voting.
like an associate.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 associate vacancies, I believe.
We need another position, we need two positions, is what you're saying?
Yeah, because the
Oh.
one voting member, full member resigned.
Robert.
Yeah, and so now you were down 1 associate to begin with. Now an associate is going to a full member, so 2
So
vacancies,
those
so.
who are interested in working and volunteering your time for town committees, the zoning board of appeals is a great
Great committee,
place.
yeah. That's good.
Might be at some point just get a list of all the
Openings?
openings that we need, and just so, because I think we've done a pretty good job of filling most of the committees, but be nice to kind of to get that. I think we're at the point now where we can entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. You had a chance to go through.
Yeah, I got them all. I got them all.
Do I get?